Good morning, everybody. How you doing this morning? And I'm Phil Brilliant, and this is Simply Brilliant. It is Friday, February 27th, and I'm going to apologize. I am a little late. I couldn't get out yesterday morning to really put something up. Long story short, I was actually out of town. I was on vacation. Myself and Debbie went with five other couples to Punta Cana for a long weekend. Five of my best friends from high school, and we got stranded because of the snow. I got to tell you, it was crazy. Never in my entire life have I experienced anything like this. I guess, you can say, oh, you got stranded in Punta Cana. How bad can that be? But when you own a company, you know, when you're attorneys that need to be in court, when you're a judge who needs to be in court, when you're a school teacher who needs to be in school, you got to get back and you got to get to work. Saving grace was there was no work or school on Monday and Tuesday also, but I ended up flying from Punta Cana to Cleveland to Philadelphia. We had another couple that flew from Punta Cana to Cleveland to LaGuardia. We had two couples that didn't get back till yesterday that flew from Punta Cana to Fort Lauderdale to Detroit to Westchester County Airport in New York. And we had another couple that went from Punta Cana to DC to hop on a train, but the train was canceled. So they spent $1,000 on an Uber up to Westchester County, New York. And my favorite all time, gotta love my buddy Danny. He flew from Punta Cana to Panama City, thinking it was Panama City, Florida, but it was Panama City, Panama. They didn't have a visa, couldn't get out of the airport. Spent about 8 hours in the airport, and then they flew to JFK just to Uber back to New Brunswick for $800. What a cluster! Vacation was great. The weather was phenomenal. Food and drinks, I'm probably not going to eat or drink for the next year. But man, when the weather started coming in, the stress just built, and not uh, it kind of took away from some of the fun. But we had a great time, and always good to spend time with friends. I did get back in time for the meeting on Wednesday. Kind of went back and forth relative to if I was going to go or not. But I did go. Uh, there was nobody knew if the meeting was going to happen. It wasn't posted. If you remember, the town hall was closed on Wednesday for no real reason. I did question uh, Drew Chabot, who is the appointed acting business administrator, and he said it was closed due to snow and ice. Schools were open. Snow and ice? What do you mean? Nothing against the employees of the Township of Toms River. And make it clear, DPW did an amazing job with what they have to do. The employees of Township and Toms River are always available when you need them. But, the key part is available when you need them. So there were power outages through town. People had issues relative to whether their streets were plowed. And when you close town hall, there's nobody for the residents to turn to. The old story, I'm with the government and I'm here to help. When you close the building and you close it down, there's nobody there to help you and you don't know what to do. Instead, you call 911 or you panic. So to me, that building should have been opened on Tuesday, but definitely open on Wednesday. And you're an employee of Township of Toms River and you can't get to work. You can't get to work. You take a day off. That's what we all do. You use a PTO day, and that's it. We made it through COVID, and the township didn't close. They worked remote. They were always available. This, leadership right now has no idea how to lead, and they, when chaos, runs an organization and panic, you have two options, on and off. And this administration continues to turn off. So that was, the meeting was interesting. I'm going to hit a couple of the points, but I have so much research to do, and so I got so much work to do, and I don't want to take up too much time here. But a couple things was one, Daniel Rodrick continues to have his outbursts and continues to disrupt the meeting. And I did point out in my comments, I think, Councilman Sikosi, Council President Sikosi, excuse me, did a better job of kind of silencing him. I like the fact, I think as Cutie says, be quiet as opposed to shut up. I think that is more courteous. But there is something in the code, excuse me, in the rules that were approved by this council that says, and I'm trying to find it here real quick because I pulled up the rules, that the council clerk, and that clerk is run by the council, is supposed to note every time the mayor is basically out of order. Now, if Stephen Hensel were to do that, he would probably never put his pen down. But I did call out the fact, and I do expect to see that in the minutes. In addition, it says that these council meetings are to be live streamed and recorded. It didn't happen. The rules need to be followed. It also calls out conflicts of interest, and it says that no member of the town council shall vote upon or participate in discussion, deliberation, or negotiations of any ordinance, resolution, or appointment where a family member is associated with the subject matter. This prohibition applies if a family member is subject of an ordinance or resolution, an appointment or reappointment, and it goes on. I commend Councilman Aber did not vote on my reappointment to the MUA. He abstained because his son works for the MUA. Good job. However, Councilman Coleman, not only did he vote when his stepson was appointed as a commissioner of the MUA, Jim Bratton, but the other night he had the audacity to not only vote no for my reappointment, but when I questioned and said, I'd like to know why he voted no, Council President Sikosi said, would you like to answer the question? And Councilman Coleman said, no. Why did he vote no against me? We know why, but I wanted to hear it from him. And Councilwoman Lynn OToole, who was calling in once again, when it came time for the public comment period, was nowhere to be found. So she was gone. But I think it's important that this council upholds the rules that they approved. On the meeting agenda, it was a similar agenda that was on from February 11th, which, if you remember, was canceled because of the flood from the pipe break, which we're still waiting to get more information on. But what we learned out of this meeting, was a couple things. So there was a resolution which was passed, which basically denied the consent of the appointment of Drew Chabot as the acting business administrator. It was very clear that Daniel Rodrick said, doesn't matter. He's still going to act as it is. There's nothing that says I need your approval. That'll be up for question. But the issue is his qualifications, which have not been provided. Does he satisfy the requirements? And, whether you're an acting or you're appointed, you should satisfy the minimum requirements. This does require a bachelor's degree. Does he have it? We don't know because there's been no information provided. So we'll see where that goes. In addition, there was a closed session, executive session, and they came back out. Now, keep in mind, Mayor Rodrick said he didn't know there was going to be a meeting. No one returned his calls. Meeting scheduled. No one canceled it. The meeting occurs. BS on him. But it comes out that the attorney for the affordable housing deal shows up. He's there to do a presentation. So if the mayor didn't know there was going to be a meeting, how did he know to have the attorney come? And they passed, it appears, I'm still trying to, it looks like 3 ordinances and 3 resolutions, which had to do with the fair share housing deal that was approved by council in December and was affirmed by the court in January, because there were modifications. They went behind closed doors. They talked in executive session with the attorney. They came out. I will tell you, the discussion that occurred really didn't make sense because we had nothing to review and we knew nothing about it. And then they went through and they passed resolutions and ordinances. The public did not comment on it. Even council didn't really comment on it. Resolutions that were passed were done. We don't get the opportunity to make comments. There's no second bite of the apple. There's no discussions. And I don't understand some of them, and I need to get more detail on some of them. Like there's one here, which is for 2008 Route 37 Associates LLC. And it basically says there'll be 4 affordable housing and 2 additional stories added to the building at block 796 lot 3, which is 2008 Route 37. It's on the west side of, excuse me, it's on the east side. It's on the east side of the parkway. It's down closer to like the Super Wawa on Coolidge. And so they're going to add 2 stories on top. And of the 20 new units, 4 of them will be affordable housing. That was a resolution. And then there's a resolution which basically supports 100% construction for affordable housing at block 171, lots 23 and 24 by Beacon Estates LLC. Don't know who they are, but these 2 lots are owned by Toms River Township. I don't understand how a private developer can develop property owned by Toms River Township. And I need to go back and look, but I believe this was property that was bought to preserve open space by previous administrations. More details need to be looked there, but it's a resolution once again. So it's a done deal. Not sure, how this all happens. And this all came to be, if I piece this together, Hope's Crossing, which was part of the agreement that was presented by Daniel Rodrick and was approved by council and was sent to the court, withdrew their plan. And so this is why there was this great scramble that had to be done by March 15th. But I have to get more details on that. And then there are ordinances that were approved relative to this also that have to do with these lots. There's so much up in the air. I'm not going to really opine on it right now. Again, I'm not an attorney. Don't play one on TV. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express the other night when we were stranded. This needs to be piecemealed and out. It appears not to change the number of 186, but there's so many different variables left and right. We got to dig back into that and see what happens. Other things that came out was engineer John Mealy is responding to the public about what's going on Clifton Avenue, talked about that a new plan was agreed to and there will be excavation work done there, and soils that he says don't have asbestos in it but are going to be excavated are going to an approved asbestos disposal facility, unlike the other material. Well, what about the other material that went to a facility? What about all that material? So it sounds like there is a plan of action, but right now with all the snow, nothing's going to happen. And there's agreement between the EPA and the Department of Labor. What I want to know is what happened to the NOV that was issued for doing work without permits? What happened to the investigations and work on the Cox Crow Horse Farm property, on the Gutman property, and the Hupper property, because buildings got taken down there and there were no permits? What does all this mean to the residents of Toms River? And it came out that there's 3 bills that were on the bill list for February 11th. Councilman Clinton Bradley mentioned that were not on the bill list the other night. Where are they? Were they paid? Were they not paid? One was for Joe LaPally for doing photographs for the council. And Dan Rodrick said, well, he deserved to get paid, didn't he? He did the work. So he got paid without the council approval. Now there is a leeway that was approved, and CFO Gallagher said that this always happens and they can pay some bills because they have due dates, but they're supposed to report it back to council. One of the other bills was asbestos remediation. So I don't know how much it was, but that was paid without council approval. We need to find out that. And then Shore News Network, like $14,000 was on the February 11th bill list. Remember that meeting was canceled, didn't show up on February 25th. Why not? Was it paid without the authority of the council? We need to dig into that. The biggest issue here is there's no transparency, there's no accountability, and you don't trust what comes out of Daniel Rodrick's mouth. So how do you trust when something disappears? You have to assume that something was done unfaithfully. And we need to dig into that because we're the taxpayers, we're the residents, we deserve to know. Last but not least, but I'm not going to go into full detail. Yesterday, it did come out, and again, Wednesday night, was not said, but Wednesday afternoon, Judge Dawn Gertner basically smacked Toms River Township and Dan Rodrick in the face by siding with Meridia on the Capadaglia project for basically everything relative to zoning and relative to the action that was performed by the planning board and actions that were performed by the council by passing an ordinance to repeal the redevelopment agreement, basically citing Pascarella and Justin Lamb for having conflicts of interest and should have never voted, citing the township for basically saying you needed a supermajority vote, even though Pascarella said you didn't. And basically what it does is it overturns the ordinance that repealed and reinstates the approvals. Now, this is only one part of the case. There's still more to go. It's still going to be very costly. But Daniel Rodrick goes into the paper and says, well, they still need to come back to us for the height. So this isn't a done deal. And two, we're just going to go back and do it the right way based upon the judge's recommendations. No, the right way is negotiate what should be done there. Don't do Daniel Rodrick Water Park and work with the developer. Don't ever forget this one developer is the only one willing to develop in downtown Toms River. You want to look at what you see today, or do you want to have something that has some housing, which will bring people into Toms River, which has a waterfront amphitheater that's being paid for by the developer, not the residents of Toms River. And don't ever forget all these plans that Daniel Rodrick has for splash parks, for jet ski launches. We're paying for it. Us. It doesn't come out of Dan Rodrick's pocket. It comes out of the residents of towns, of taxpayers' pocket. I want to look more into that. I've kind of gone off in a few. I wanted to give you a little quick update as to where we were, what's going on, and what do we have to look forward to. We have to look forward to, we need to get more information relative to this lawsuit that was decided upon by Judge Gertner. We need to know more about these affordable housing ordinances that were passed and will come back at the first meeting of February, which I believe is February 11th. No, excuse me, March 11th at 6:30. There's so much out there right now, and that's why it's sometimes tough and your head spins. I really hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope this update was a little bit of information, and I'll work hard to make sure to get more information out to you. I'm Phil Brilliant. It's Simply Brilliant. Take care of yourself.